Right. And hi, everyone. If you're just joining us, we're going to wait a few minutes for everybody to sign on. But welcome to AgriWebb's Beef Marketing Innovation Webinar. We're really excited you all are here, and we've got a great panel for you today. Feeling more and more inadequate with my background against everybody else on here as we sign on. Everyone else's is quite lovely. And if you all want and you're just attending, I'll repeat this hopefully once more before we start, but please feel free to use the Q&A and the chat feature to interact, ask questions. We'll try to get to everything. Also, if you want to, while everyone's signing on, please feel free to use the chat feature right now to let us know who you are and where you're from and to say hello to everyone else signing in. Wait about 45 more seconds and then we will get started. It looks like people are still trickling in. Nice to meet you guys. Hi, Annie. Hi, Delvin. Hi, Ray. Right, and if you've just tuned in, we're waiting about, I'd say 30 more seconds before we get started as a few more people come on in. Welcome to AgriWebb's Beef Innovation Marketing Webinar. We've got a good panel and a really good talk scheduled for everyone today. All right. And I'm sure people will still continue to trickle in, but we'll get started to make the most of our time here. I will be quiet in just a moment. I'm just here to really kick off this webinar and introduce our panel and Robert Williams, who is going to be leading the discussion today. But my name is Liz Moore. I'm the Vice President of Marketing here at AgriWebb. And if you're not familiar with AgriWebb, we're an end-to-end livestock business management solution that's really designed to help global ranchers and producers get more out of their business, whether that means to you being able to get more done in less time, to make more money and be more profitable, or in many cases, just to ensure the legacy of your ranch in your future and your succession plan for many generations to come. So recently we did a 2022 State of the Global Farmer report. We had hundreds and hundreds of responses from ranchers and farmers and global producers from the UK, from Australia, and of course from the United States. And we've learned a lot from this report. And over the next few months, we'll be running a series of webinars here in the United States on special topics that came out of what was most interesting and most important to the US producers that we surveyed. One of the big insights that we pulled from the survey was around direct-to-consumer marketing. And we found just under 39% of US producers surveyed are either getting into this space or already practicing direct-to-consumer marketing methods. And more producers by a long shot than that were really interested in getting into the space and learning what it all entailed. So the first topic of our webinar series is beef marketing innovation. We've got an amazing panel here. We're really excited to hear what everyone has to say. And again, this should be really interactive. Please use the chat and the Q&A function to ask questions, to comment, to state your opinion, and we'll try to answer all of those questions and address all of those comments. But with that, I'm going to hand it over to Robert Williams, and he'll lead the discussion from here on in. So Robert, the floor is yours.
Hey, thank you, Liz. So I'm Robert Williams, the Executive Director of the American Wagyu Association, and I'm certainly excited to be here today with this fantastic group of young ladies. As producers, we're often on the wrong side of the marketing equation and often feel, and I think that we don't have enough control of driving the market, for many of our products. And so on the beef side, we hear it often, packer consolidation. And by no means do I want to minimize the value and the role that packers play in our industry. They're very important to us. But But with that said, I do believe that there are opportunities for producers, and in fact, we're, I think, today seeing incredible growth of direct-to-consumer marketing today. So, and according to the U.S. Roundtable for Sustainable Beef Production, packing plants in the U.S. are relatively small. In fact, 92% harvest less than 50,000 head of cattle per year. However, larger plants with capacity over 50,000 head accounts for most of the cattle harvested, as many of us know. So in fact, they account for approximately 96% of the cattle harvested annually. And four major companies dominate that market with about 85% of the cattle harvested. But in recent years, and we've heard and we've seen more emphasis placed on direct-to-consumer marketing. With the onset of COVID-19 in the last couple of years, I think we've seen a more direct consumer sales increase because of that. And I know we've witnessed it in the producers that I deal and work with. People wanted a secure source of beef considering these uncertain times. So we've seen that increase in direct consumer marketing. As many of us, I think, know and realize as we begin to look into this, that one size doesn't fit all. So there's not a simple approach to that business model, and it's often littered with a lot of obstacles. Navigating those obstacles are challenging, and today I think we have three accomplished young ladies here with us who have navigated many of those obstacles. So I want to get into some introductions for each of the panelists, and remember, as Liz told you earlier, that if you have questions, we'll be interested in seeing those, and we'll address those questions at the end of these comments. And but let me get into some introductions here of our panel members real quickly. Let me get the first one here. We have Brandy Buzzard-Frobose. She's a rancher from Southeast Kansas and has been a passionate agriculture advocate since 2019. Really fascinated with her story here. Her work in the professional and advocacy arenas led to her selection as a top 10 industry leader under 40 by Cattle Business Weekly, as well as the NCBA Masters of Beef Advocacy Advocate of the Year. She has spoken on MSNBC, Fox, CBS, the Weather Channel, and Newsy, addressing many issues like conservation, beef sustainability, and nutrition. Brandy, though, was also invited or visited the White House. That must have been quite exciting, and has spoken to senior White House officials about agriculture and sustainability. Brandy is currently the Director of Communications for the Red Angus Association of America and editor of the Red Angus magazine. She, her husband, Hyatt, and their daughters, Oakley and Quincy, live in Southeast Kansas and own High Bar Cattle Company. It's a Gelby balancer seed stock operation and have been selling beef direct to consumers now for 3 years. Next, we have Jacqueline Wilson from Lakeside, Nebraska. Jacqueline is a fifth generation on the Wilson Ranch. Founded in 1888, the Wilson Ranch is a commercial red Angus red composite operation near Lakeside, Nebraska. In 2011, Jacqueline started Flying Diamond Genetics. Started a recipient program raising ET calves for producers and seed stock producers. And then in 2019, Flying Diamond Beef, ranch to plate direct marketing beef business. Jacqueline has served on the Nebraska Cattlemen's Board of Directors and Executive Committee, Nebraska Agriculture Leadership Conference or Council, and was chair of that organization. National Cattlemen's Beef Association Young Beef Leader, and Resolution Committee Chair and member, and Vice Chair, NCBA's Board of Directors Policy Division, and is the current chair of International Trade. Worked with Nebraska Brand Committee, has worked on ag roundtables for Senator Deb Fischer, Congressman Adrian Smith, Governor Pete Ricketts, Nebraska Humanities Council, and also the Security First Bank of Board of Directors. Jacqueline has also traveled extensively as a representative for various state and national organizations to countries such as Russia, Ukraine, Poland, Brazil, China, and New Zealand. She's spoken extensively to groups like the American Akushi Annual Convention, Range Beef Cow Symposium, the Leader Bitterroot Ag Writers Workshop, Sharing Our Diversity and Unity, Nebraska College of Technical Agriculture, was a keynote speaker at the Nebraska Youth Beef Leaders University of Nebraska-Lincoln, Sheridan College Ranch Sustainability Forum, Farm Credit Knowledge Center. Jacqueline was also named a 2016 Farm Journal Media 40 Under 40 and Agriculture Award winner, and was included in the book Generations on the Land. In addition to her work, as if that wasn't enough, in addition to her work in ranching and the beef industry, many of you might recognize Jacqueline's work. She writes editorials for 5 different weekly and biweekly publications that circulate to over 50,000 producers throughout the Midwest. And then we also have Fallon Flick from Kersey, Colorado. Fallon is a livestock data and logistics manager for Mishima Reserve American Wagyu beef. Having had the opportunity to work with Fallon a few times at NCBA trade show, I know she is very passionate about cattle and the beef industry. Fallon has a strong background in production agriculture, having come from a blend of a commercial cow-calf producer and also a successful show cattle background. Fallon has a Bachelor of Science degree in animal science with a minor in ag resource economics from Colorado State. So that's our panel. I'd ask each of you maybe to just give us a brief overview maybe of your business model and why you are passionate about this topic today, direct to consumer marketing. Brandy, you want to kick us off here?
Yeah, sure. Thank you for that introduction, Robert. I'm definitely honored to be here with these 2 ladies. So our operation, we don't, direct to beef is not the main source of our business. Like I said in my bio, we are a Gelvian balancer seed stock operation. And so a lot of our beef that we market comes from bulls that aren't up to the standards of what we want to sell to commercial customers. So we cut them, ban them, and then we feed them out and we market them through another, they're going to bring more, and it's going to be more of a profit center for us selling them direct to consumer than it would be taking them to an auction barn and selling them for what the market is offering. So we have tried to diversify when we can so that we can optimize our profit and making a profit. We were already doing a little bit of direct to consumer before the pandemic hit. Like in 2018 or 2019, we started doing direct sales. But when the pandemic hit, that side of our business really just skyrocketed. So it's just like a constant now. We always plan on having those marketing channels built in. So it's been a learning process. It's been nice to have another place to send those animals that aren't quite good enough to sell to our commercial customers. But it has been a steep learning curve, but it's been exciting. So,
sure. Jacqueline, same question. Can you give us a brief overview of your business? And we know you're passionate, but what drives that passion for you?
Well, I think, originally we started a business. It was myself and 2 other females that in about 2019, we finally decided, well, we've been talking about it for years. Let's go ahead and start it. And so we did. And fortunately, we had actually everything in place right before the pandemic hit. So that was a great time to have all those packing spots lined up and everything like that, because it became a zoo after the pandemic. And then we went ahead and carried it on the first year. We harvested, I think, only about 60 head that first year that went to the direct program. And then we kind of had, it was a really tough situation. One of our partners was killed in an ATV accident. And so that really wound up things the last year while we were trying to figure out the estate and everything. And then finally decided at the end of last year, in order to kind of get things finalized and to continue on, that I would just take it on house directly on the ranch here, because previously we had set it up as a separate entity and we're buying cattle from our operation. And so now everything's set up here from the ranch. I'm running it myself here, which is great. It gives us a lot more capabilities of what we're able to do. But it like Brandy, it's a very, very small part of our daily operation. I mean, we're right now, I don't see it becoming any more than a 1/10 of our operation, just because of the fact of the manpower and extra work and dedication that it takes to doing a direct to consumer program. And it's also been, like Brandy said, a steep learning curve. There's been a lot of pros and cons, but it's made me a better producer. It's made me more in tune with exactly how my cattle finish out all the way to the end. And that's something that I'm very fortunate to have that learning opportunity.
Great. Thank you, Jacqueline. Okay, Fallon, your turn. A little bit about your program, an overview of that, and your passion for direct-to-consumer marketing and how Mishima Reserve plays in that role.
Yeah, so Mishima Reserve, in short, is I would say a grassroots driven but still vertically integrated beef company. My specific passion for that comes from the Wagyu breed. My family has history in the breed, not only in the show ring, but just in the genetic side of that. Also the quality of beef. I think anybody that's maybe tried it knows that it's not necessarily far superior, but just of high quality, and that they make a connection to that in terms of the eating experience. So that's definitely something that fuels my passion for it. It's a very interesting world, right? We don't necessarily do a lot of direct to consumer because of the nature of the beast that we're in. It is a lot of work, just like both Jacqueline and Brandy said, but that is our role, is essentially converting cattle into beef for a specific brand. There is a portion of our business that's honestly pretty small, that's e-commerce. And I know in the pandemic that's something that exploded for a lot of smaller businesses, which is great, very valuable. Our role more so is over creating value and a supply chain and more of a producer-oriented relationship with individuals to capitalize on the characteristics of the breed that are so good. So, I mean, we take it very seriously in terms of communicating with our producers and also offer a lot of transparency, like Jacqueline said, in terms of data, harvest data, closeout data, et cetera. It's not just about selling calves and you don't know where they go. You might not necessarily know what cut ends up where in terms of what store and what side of the country, or if it ends up on a restaurant plate for someone, but you will know everything about your cattle when you sell them to us and be offered anything else in terms of, you know, producer relations of to grow or to maybe, you know, not do as many next year because it didn't work best for you. We're really open in that regard. So not necessarily direct to consumer in terms of knowing the end producer that gets that product, but very passionate about the product and the steps to getting it to someone at the end point.
Mm-hmm. Great, thank you. Well, as beef producers, we're attempting to add value to our cattle here, and I think we're doing a great job with that with these types of programs and with direct to consumer marketing and or something similar to that. So that's kind of where you are today, and where do you kind of see where yourself or these types of marketing programs going beyond 2022 and into the future? Jacqueline, Brandy, maybe you want to each address that. Yeah, one of you.
I think where I see them going on beyond the future, truthfully, I kind of see them. And I mean, I hate to be pessimistic here, but I think there's some great opportunity for producers out there to do direct programs. But I also see that sooner or later, the work is going to catch up to us. You know, that's one of the things that I struggle with myself, is trying to find the time and commitment. And also, you know, things like constant marketing and everything when I'm trying to run a cow-calf operation too. And so I hope they all don't go by the wayside. I feel that, you know, the movement right now is really strong, and I hope it continues. But at the same time, from a producer standpoint, it wears a person out. And so hopefully that's something that doesn't happen to everyone. But, you know, I'd like to see it continue on and maybe get a little stronger year after year. But at one time, I think when we started the business, you know, we were to the point we were considering harvesting, you know, that 400 to 500 a year range to send to a direct program. And now, you know, 60 was a lot. And now I'm like, okay, now to get back up to 60, is that even attainable with doing it all in house? I don't know. So those are some tough questions to ask for sure.
Oh, I don't ever want to do 60, Jacqueline. That's a lot. And I kind of agree with what Jacqueline's saying. I think that it's great that grocery shoppers are getting more information about where specifically their beef is coming from and are getting more connections with beef farmers and ranchers. I think that is awesome. There's a lot of people who have learned about beef and like how it's raised that probably not ever would have done that had it not been for a pandemic. I still wish that we hadn't had a pandemic for that to happen, but you know, it is what it is. I think that selling direct to consumer is always going to be there, but I don't see it, you know, it's not ever going to be like half of our business because like Jacqueline said, it does take so much time. You know, not many people have bought a quarter beef. So for every quarter beef I sell or half beef, you know, I advertise it on Facebook and through an email marketing list that we have, but then, you know, I might get 10 people interested and I have to walk those 10 people through that process of like, you know, you pay for it on the hanging weight, and this is what we charge, and then you pay for the processing, and this is the amount of meat that you pay for on a hanging weight, but you get this much take home. And if you do boneless cuts, and just walking people through that process so that they have all the information they need. So when they get, you know, they think they're getting, you know, 300 pounds of meat because they paid for, you know, they paid for a big, well, that'd be a really big quarter, but you know, they expect more meat than what they paid for. So you have to walk them through all that information. Fallon's laughing at me. Have to walk them through all that information. And then if you talk to 10 people, you maybe get one person committed, and it just takes a lot of time. It's definitely worth it. But it is a lot of work if you're also trying to, you know, have a cow-calf operation or literally any other operation with cattle. It just takes up a lot of time to only be 10 or 15% of your business. So if you're going to do it, you really need to be invested and recognize before you get into it that it is a time commitment. It is an arm of your business that needs to be ran professionally, just like the rest of your business, but it is time intensive.
Great. Thank you, Brandon.
It's time intensive, but not out in the snow at least. So that's the.
Does get you from back inside, right? Or some anyway. Well, Fallon, they certainly, I think they pointed out some obstacles and challenges that they have, and you offer an opportunity with more of a cooperative supply chain type of an operation. So, what is that going to look like, I think, in the future, and what opportunities are there for producers?
You know, it's probably going to be the complete opposite answer, in short, because we're experiencing a lot of growth so much that we can't keep up with the demand. And whether that's for, you know, the product specifically, the brand specifically, or just the transparency, we haven't really dove into that. But I think there's a lot of value. I think, like both ladies pointed out, because of the amount of work that's behind just a very specialized DTC business, maybe a larger business like us that has the opportunity to still partner with smaller cow-calf producers and really get on their level and understand what they're doing, not just buying their calves like I talked about before, but then offer that opportunity of transparency to the consumer is valuable. Obviously, they want that. And is it to the level where there's a barcode on each cut and each package that says this is the animal that your cut came from? No. Will we ever be able to get there? We don't know, right? Everybody wants to theoretically, but it's close. And we know all the producers, you know, by face and name and hand. You can call them anytime and ask them any questions. And that's really what it's about. We know those cows where they're at. They know their cows. They appreciate the breed and the partnership. And it's really all positive in that manner. And that's what people want. They seem to not have really a limit for wanting that, which is good for us at least.
Great. So there's what should attendees, you know, we got people here that are obviously here to learn a little bit more about direct to consumer marketing and those opportunities, and each of you have had some challenges and obstacles that you've pointed out already. But what should, you know, for those folks out there listening, thinking about this, what are some of the questions or considerations they should be asking themselves before they dig too deep into, before they get too far down the road and figure out they didn't really look into this deep enough to know what they were doing? So what's some advice to some of our attendees? Jacqueline, you?
Sure, absolutely. I think, and that goes along with the question that was there in chat about efficiencies. I think that to me is the biggest one, is how do you fit this into your business in an efficient manner? You know, for instance, are you going to have a steady supply if you're going to be marketing, you know, year round? Are you going to have enough cattle or access? Are you going to have shipping access? You know, one of the biggest issues that we ran into was dry ice access, especially this last summer when there was it seemed to be a nationwide dry ice shortage. You know, and all of those play into factor. And then also for me, I think more and more issue becomes a big one for us, you know, that we kind of question all the time, because I constantly see time and time, especially in DTC programs, you know, we're raising ranch raised, homegrown, certain kind of breed of cattle. But at the same time, you know, if somebody asked us to prove that, would we be able to prove it without a shadow of a doubt? And that's something that we've really questioned this last year. And that's kind of probably why you see the background that you do there. we were the first ranch in the entire world to actually tokenize a group of feeder steers this last year and put them on blockchain. And we did that by utilizing a combination of genomic data and also facial recognition. And that's the difference you see between the two steers. There is the pixelations on the one on this side compared to the one on this side. And so we can ensure without a shadow of a doubt that the animal is what we say it is. And I think as we become more and more open to direct marketing, and as consumers are readily accept it, they're going to start asking more and more questions. You know, is this what you say it is? Is this antibiotic free? Does this not have any growth promotants? You know, and I think, you know, that's something that we got to be prepared to answer for sure.
Brandon?
Yeah, I don't know how to make it more efficient. If someone has some answer to that, I'd love it. I try to batch work on it. So if I try to like set aside an hour every, you know, if I have some going to the butcher, I'll try to like work for an hour on it and then set it aside, because the inquiries can just really kind of roll in and distract you. But something that's really important is to have a good relationship with your butcher or the packer, you know, whatever you want to call where you're sending them. It is hard to get spots right now. I remember when the pandemic first started, like, you know, that was like March 13th or something was that first Friday. And we started seeing the grocery store shelves start to get empty. And like within a week, I had called our butcher and booked spots like all the way through 2020. And then we got to January 1st of 2021 and I booked them all the way through 2021. And I already have all of 2023 booked. So I think having that relationship with your butcher is really good so that you can make sure you have those spots, because I have had to turn customers away. Just last week, I had to turn 3 away because I don't have a spot right now for an animal to go. And those customers are wanting beef right now. So having those spots, trying to manage your herd so that you have cattle available year round. Like if you want it to be an income stream for you, and you want an appointment each month at your butcher, like you need your cattle to be, you know, uniform throughout the year. We are a fall calving herd, so usually in the like late fall, like October, I have no shortage of animals that fit that butcher ideal butcher weight. But like we have to think creatively and on how we get them ready for, you know, if we have some and want some in April or something like that. So what does that look like? Are we grazing them a little longer so that we can stretch out that growing season? So having a good relationship with your butcher so that you have places to go, and then just thinking about supply management so that your customers, if you have someone who buys a quarter of beef in January and they want another one in June, are you going to have it in June? So those are two important things that when we got started in like 2018 or 19, we didn't really give a lot of thought to. We just thought, we'll send one when we have one ready. And you could do that before the pandemic, but you can't do that now. So really sitting down and having a plan of what you want to try to achieve in your vision is a good idea. Like any business, it's good to have a business plan.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, you deal with the same, it sounds like you deal with the same obstacles that the large packers deal with, is supply chain and keeping cattle there for your consumers when they want it, when they demand it, and want to have that backyard barbecue that you've got a product for them. So yeah, I think we all deal with those. So Fallon, your approach, as was pointed out, is different, and from working with producers. And so what are some of the considerations that, those folks that want to work with the supply chain, like such as yourself, what are some considerations that you would or advice you would give them, when they reach out to you?
Yeah, I think regardless of the supply chain, you need to make sure it works for you. The calving season comes into it big for us, and also just what your goals are. So like working with us, specifically, it would be, do you want to turn bulls out, or are you open to AI? We tend to see that more producers just want bulls in hand to have, which is fine. You can lease or buy those, and maybe depending on your cash flow, just figuring out which option is better for you, and if the team that you're working with has that opportunity, which one you will or won't work with in that regard. Also, the breed specific thing with Wagyu is big. A lot of our producers are maybe skeptical just because they haven't dealt with them before. And we get the question a lot about, what am I going to give up in weaning weight compared to like just an Angus calf? We would predominantly be used on an Angus cow base, some registered, some not, just commercial, even like Baldy cows. And it depends, it varies, obviously with the part of the country that you're in and what calving season you're in, but making sure that the premium that we have the potential to give you is going to actually be of benefit to you with that give up in calving or weaning weight. And it's not a bunch, it's like maybe 100 pounds or less, depending on where you're at. So really just making sure it fits your production goals, right? And then in addition to that, what do you want out of it? We have a lot of producers that get in and then maybe get frustrated because there's a little bit of paperwork. I mean, we try to age and source verify everything that we can. We put electronic EIDs and we supply those to the producer with a matching visual tag and everything. And that's part of my job, is tracking all of that to manage efficiency and conversion and all of that, which AgriWebb actually helps a lot with in terms of data management. So, you know, are you willing to put those tags in for us before you sell those to us and they get shipped to the yard? Or is the age and source paperwork maybe too much work for you? And just being transparent with us in that regard so that we know what to expect in terms of that calf crop. It's not required by any means, but it's definitely something that we want to do if we can. In addition to that, just your vaccination protocols and whatever the case may be there's some people that are very specific and strict and they have a good rounded almost business plan, right, for those weaned calves and what they're doing and where they're going, and others that don't. We just want to keep them healthy as possible. So just, again, communicating what you're doing. And if you're open to insight, we can definitely provide that, whatever the case may be. If you're not, then that's fine. We just, you know, might be negotiated in terms of the price because there's always more risk with that situation. So really, it's more so just asking questions. I would say in the long run, a lot of people that we visit with feel maybe timid or scared that it's not going to fit their production system, or they just had absolutely no knowledge about the breed or the company or a vertically integrated beef brand. And it's just understanding all of it. We're flexible. I mean, we have retained ownership options and all of the works there. So we're really open to anything. And even if it's something we don't do, I would almost guarantee we're willing to work on it for you if it's something that's really a deal breaker for you. So just asking questions and really, I would say, having that business plan down like Randy did about what you're trying to get out of your crop and going forward from there.
Well, what do you see, Fallon, to see as maybe the biggest obstacle as producers working with you?
I would say it's the initial sign on without, I mean, there's not actually a sign on, but just that factor, right? They don't know the breed, and phenotypically compared to just like even a balance or an Angus or a red Angus calf, they're definitely not the same. And we understand that. That would probably be it. I mean, that and just kind of if they're going from like a specific direct consumer business model to what we're doing now, maybe giving up the fact of like they don't know where those calves are going to go. It's not that you could never see them. It's not that we're not going to tell you where they're going, because we do and you can, and I mean, the yards are awesome and they're well taken care of and et cetera, et cetera. It's just maybe having to give up a little bit of that close to the net kind of a deal that they would have if they're moving from that system to with us. But like I said before, very transparent about those cattle and want to be to provide the increase in genetic value or whatever the case may be the producer's looking for on the back end with that data. So
good, great. So Brandy, what was the biggest obstacle that you were challenged with or had to overcome, and how did you approach that, and how did you make that work?
Oh, well, I mean, other than probably when we first got started, just like marketing it, because there's a couple Facebook groups and like networks that we do a lot of marketing through. One is called Shop Kansas Farms. And it's this community that was created during the pandemic of, I think it has like 90-some thousand people in it, but it's all these Kansas farmers and ranchers that do direct consumer sales of meat and food products and cheese and all kinds of stuff like that. And then there's a lot of grocery shoppers in it. So it's the challenge of selling it is not near as like daunting as it used to be. But I would say just like finding those people who are interested in buying a quarter beef, because like lots of people are interested in it, but it's hard to find them when you're first getting started, I guess. Because yeah, like that was probably our biggest thing. And now, I mean, I'm not going to say that it's like easy to sell 3 or 4 head in one butcher turn, because sometimes we'll send 3 head at one time. So it's not like it's not super easy, but it's not like stressing me out that the morning they're going to the butcher, I'm like, I don't have these sold. What am I going to do? So that was probably the biggest thing, is just like, we've committed to doing this. We've sent this steer to the butcher. I'm not bringing a whole beef home to my freezer. We've got to get it sold. So that was kind of like the scary part. But now, very rarely do I have that scary part, that scary feeling. And if I do, we can generally get it taken care of. And I call it, like, we have a list of repeat customers. I can just go down and say, hey, how's your beef? You know, what's your beef situation? Are you interested? And you need more? Are you interested in getting some more? And so usually it doesn't take very many calls or contacts to get something sold if we really need to. So.
Jacqueline, what about you? The biggest obstacle maybe that you faced? I know you faced a couple of different ones, but what's the biggest one, and how did you address that? You alluded to one of them earlier, but are there others, or another obstacle?
Yeah, I mean, definitely the biggest one was losing a business partner and trying to factor in of how everything was going to work after that, because she was kind of going to be our marketing and go-to person on everything from farmers market to social media. I think the next biggest one for us has been storage, because there's times that we do process 10 or more head at a whack. And so, I like to have beef on hand. We sell everything here from an individual cut all the way up to a whole animal. And so being able to find some place where to store those was a challenge. When there was all three of us that were involved in the project, our storage facility was a freezer warehouse down in Denver. And so anytime we needed product, we'd run the trailer down to Denver, pull product. So I also had a lot of products sitting on a freezer trailer here on the ranch that, I could take wherever it's needed, but it was still kind of a pain to go and have to sort if you needed larger amounts. But since we moved everything in-house, we actually purchased a freezer here. It's a 40 by 80. It sits outside the shop, and we're able to put everything in there and sort it by cut as soon as it comes in. All our cuts, of course, are individually ID'd. And so, if somebody gets a quarter, they might not get all of the same animal, but they will get usually a variety of our product. And so I think that's something too, was the challenges of working on consistency and uniformity in product. But I think freezer storage has definitely been one of the biggest struggles, but also it's been one of the things that has turned us more efficient by far. It has increased our efficiency tenfold to have all that product here on the ranch.
So information is really always important, and people speak about information. They want information, they want feedback, but it's difficult to collect. Fallon, on your end, I know you all spend a lot of time and a lot of efforts collecting information. And consumers, are they interested in what type of information are consumers maybe on your end interested in or not? And then also backwards into your producers, what is their biggest interest in information? And once they get that information, how do they react to it?
Yeah, so our consumers is the hard part, right? We haven't necessarily quantified what they're needing, but definitely the transparency and just the overall, I would say, brand name in terms of understanding who you are, what you're about. I mean, what you do in terms of your carbon footprint or just sustainability as a whole, and really where the cattle are coming from. What are they? Are they, in HTC, et cetera, et cetera. So having that very clear, executed in terms of our retail business is big. We do a lot of food service, and obviously we don't necessarily have control about how they're going to market the steak that's on the menu or the burger that they serve for us. It has our name on it, but those consumers don't always get the whole package, or I guess story. Do they want it? We would assume yes. Do they get it? Maybe not. Producer wise, we cannot provide our producers with enough information. And I say that in a positive way, though, because we get everything down to the individual, including individual carcass side data with a camera, and also additional information that someone at the plant visually provides us, because Wagyu beef does go above USDA standards. We have our own grading system, so there's a little bit more work there. But yeah, we track all of that in AgriWebb on an individual basis off of an EID and provide all of that back to our producers. And still sometimes, they have questions about certain, deaths and the reason why and when, or whatever the case may be, which is fine. That's great. But they just want more, and we want more too. So it's kind of integrating and just taking that next step in terms of what you need to track and where, and maybe why, and how to store it, and when to collect it, just to get the most bang for your buck in terms of evaluating everything on those animals. And it's beneficial too in terms of the efficiencies, going back to that, certain bloodlines, or if you have, producer that comes back year over year, which we usually do, we can compare that 1 year calf crop to the next and really be able to say, they didn't do as well in the yard this year, or you were down 4% on dress. Why? Were they a little bit older or younger, or whatever the case may be, to provide that feedback, which is important to us and the producer.
Great. So Jacqueline, you've gone a step that where no one else has gone yet in terms of traceability. And what's been the reaction to from your consumers?
I think we're a little ahead of the game in terms of where their mindsets are at now. I mean, they're still trying to figure out that, they can buy animal from a rancher instead of having to buy it direct from a grocery store. And so trying to get to the point where we're telling them that they can pay in cryptocurrency is something I think, I think 5-10 years down the road, I see a demand for it. But right now, it's taken more effort to try to explain it than it is the ability to sell it. But and I think that goes to say one thing, and I see this was a question in the chat. There is talking about, do we see, let me pull it up right here, where the DTC customers pay more to cover the extra work and expense. And I think that's something that all of us have to have in mind, in our back of our minds anyway, is what is our goal for doing a DTC program? Is it to make money? Is it to learn more about our product? I think originally for us, when we started the business, it was to see about making an additional income. But then when we had the opportunity to move the business in-house, for me personally, it was increasing my knowledge on the product, because there's been a lot of times over the years that I've sold cattle to the big four. I just did about a month ago. And I was able to always collect carcass data and stuff on those, or might have one in the freezer here, but I didn't have as much product that I was able to see at the end as I am now. And so it has made me eons a better producer in terms of how I finish those cattle out, what kind of protocols we have on that, what my finish weight has been massive. I've decreased my finish weight by over 200 pounds with the first cattle that we were initially sending. Where's your yields going to be at? What's that tenderness going to be like? And I think from a producer standpoint, it has made me night and day smarter in how not only am I raising my cattle, and how I'm able to tell that story to a consumer.
Yeah, that kind of leads into my next question I had for you, because I know you enjoy, like most cattle producers, driving out and looking at your cows, and you have an opinion of your cow herd and what they are. How has it changed when you drive out and look at your cows now that you started gathering this information? How's that changed your view of your cow herd?
It's made me start to think a lot more what's underneath the skin. And I think the reason, the big thing that happened for me is a year ago last spring, I had just hand selected, I weighed 40 head off of our headed feedlot steers. And I took 40 head off the upper end of the weights, and I went ahead and genomic tested them. And we have a partnership deal with Neogen. We've had it now for a couple of years for our commercial cow herd. And out of those 40 head of steers, I was going to hand select 20 to include in this NFT project, based specifically just on that tenderness gene alone. And what I got back on those cattle was surprising. I had cattle ranging from a 1 to a 10 on tenderness, which I understand that there's a huge range there. But the thing that concerned me the most is if it would have been the year before, I would have harvested all 40 of those head of steers. And if somebody's eating a 1 tenderness compared to a 10 tenderness, that might have been a return customer right there. And so, I mean, stuff like that starts to make me wonder, okay, what's more under the skin? Do we need an animal that's huge in terms of finishing them out the feedlot when I'm able to get a better yield when I'm finishing out a 1,300 to 1,400 pound animal compared to a 15.5 to 1,600 pound, and so it's all those questions. What's the health program like? Do I have to worry about a revac program when I go to the feedlot? I'm having great success without doing another revac program in a feedlot. And not only a revac program, but I don't implant going into a lot either. I do going on to grass, but I won't do any type of implant in a feedlot. And I'm actually having greater success with less death rate. And so it's all those questions that, that I have to come back to at the end of the day and say, okay, from a phenotype point of view, I like where our cattle are looking. I like that moderate frame, but I'm starting to need to know what's more under the skin in order to be successful in what I'm trying to market.
Sure. Yeah, sure. Well, Brandy, you're a communications expert. And so there's a lot of tools available today that, back, not very many years ago, but weren't available to folks like me when I was coming on early in my career. And but there's just all sorts of, and there's, you all mentioned a minute ago, I think Instagram or something, there's TikTok, there's all sorts of things out there. I'm just getting where I'm comfortable with Facebook. So what's available out there, and should people be looking at in terms of reaching consumers? What might be coming along in terms of communications to reach your consumers?
Well, thanks for calling me an expert, because I think that's definitely a relative term. I think that my belief is that any operation that is selling cattle and wants to sell outside of their home location should have a website and a Facebook page. So our ranch has both of them. This is it right here. And I sell beef. People find our website and buy beef from me that, like, they don't live in my county. I live a little over an hour from Kansas City, and I get calls from Kansas City all the time because I have a website. So we have people finding us through the website because I have SE, like search engine optimized it to, people can search beef in Kansas and it will pop up there eventually. And then we have a Facebook page because like I said, I'm in a couple Facebook groups with, local products, Shop Kansas Farms, this kind of thing. And so I promote our ranch and our freezer beef business in those. So if you, like right now, if someone, it's over here, someone searched this right now, they would find us on Facebook, they would find us on Instagram, and they would find our website. Not everybody has, like you said, you just got started with Facebook. You probably don't have an Instagram. So for people who don't have Instagram, they can find us on Facebook. For people who don't have Instagram or Facebook, they can find our website. We've also, there's lots of, like I live in Kansas, the Kansas Livestock Association has, and the Kansas Beef Council actually have a listing of producers who sell beef direct to consumer. And I've made sure that our website is there. So it's great to have those online resources like a Facebook page and a website, but also making sure that you are sharing those in the appropriate places so they can be found. So anytime I see someone, like, it's not uncommon to see another person in the beef industry that says, like, I'm creating a database or a list of people that sell direct to beef. Like, if you do this, send me your name and your ranch and I'll put it on your website. I don't care if that person is in Idaho and creating that list. I send it to them because somebody in Kansas may be looking for beef and find this Idaho rancher's website list and then find me. So it's great to have these resources, these digital marketing outlets, but also making sure that you are putting it out into the world so that it can be found. So I recommend Facebook and Instagram, or Facebook and web for everybody.
So yeah, that's going to be a challenge for me, some of the newer technologies. But so Fallon, I know you, I've worked with you a couple of times at trade shows. How important is face-to-face for you with the folks that you work with and supplying your cattle to you, as opposed to maybe Zoom calls or the telephone, that face-to-face interaction? How important is that to you?
Yeah, it's very important. And it's by far the only way we communicate with our producers, right? Besides maybe a phone call or email conversation. And we take a lot of pride in getting to see the cattle, meet the individual and their family, and really understand, who's behind us in terms of the brand and part of the system. So, I mean, we physically go to each ranch that we can, and obviously that's heavily fall shipping times. So there are exceptions where we can't make it out to everybody, but we want to be there and see the cattle and communicate with the individual about, how it went, or even during calving, whenever we can get out there. It's big, and that's not to discredit anything that Brandy said, because I think really having a good presence on different platforms and in the World Wide Web is very important. But there's a lot of our producers that don't have any of that, but alone like the ability to send us an email. So just building the trust, and really we want to know everything that we can about them as an individual and our producer, to strengthen that relationship. It's really, really important to us.
Sure. Well, I want to remind everybody, if you have some questions, we're getting close to the end of here of our hour. So if you have some questions, be sure and get in the chat room and type those out for us. We've had several comments here about that a lot of the attendees listening here have faced similar challenges and some of the same challenges that you have expressed here for us this hour. So one of them talks about freezer space, and he's got 3 commercial freezers and he's had problems with each one of them. So Jacqueline, I don't know if you've had that yet or not, but yeah, it does happen. And especially in areas, I mean, I know you're out in an area where, raised like I was, it's several miles to a neighbor, and electricity goes out or you have storms, can be challenging for you. I'm assuming you've got a backup plan for that in place.
Oh yeah, there's backup plans to backup. So yeah, for sure, because that is something that we did have happen before we got on-site freezer storage. Is I have a trailer, our freezer trailer was being a real pain in the butt, and all of a sudden one night it decided to go off and quit cooling at like, I think it was like 9 at night. I have an intern sitting in here with me, and she remembers it fondly because I called everybody and said, open up all your freezer space as much as we can. I left in the middle of the night to head to Denver to get product into storage. So I think it's a big constant worry of mine that we'll have something that happens. But we also, fortunately, I've made, like Brandy said, to make friends with the processor. I've made really good friends with the freezer guy too. So I know, fortunately, if I call him, he'll show up right away.
Yeah.
Robert,
Yeah.
Robert,
Yeah.
there's a question in the Q&A, which I've just discovered that there's a Q&A box here. And
Yeah.
a half hour ago, someone asked me about what we market. Galen Martin asked if we market quarters and halves, or do we only do retail cuts like steaks, roasts, and ground beef? We do quarters, halves, wholes, and ground beef. I have been wanting to foray into selling like boxes, like with 2 steaks, a roast, and 5 pounds of ground beef or something. But I don't have, like Jacqueline, who is on my screen, is underneath me, but I don't know where she is when you see her. But Jacqueline has a lot of freezers. We have not made that foray into having more freezers and making that much more of a time commitment to it and like pouring that much time into the business. However, I'm not opposed to it, but right now we sell ground beef individually, and then the quarters and halves. And we are licensed with the Kansas Department of Agriculture to do that, to sell those individual cuts like that. So that's what we do.
So great. So one of the questions up here was, what would make the process easier? This came from Dusty. What would make the process easier? Where are the efficiencies needing to grow the business? You want to respond to that?
Sure. I think I think that kind of goes in 2 parts with another question there about shipping. I think efficiencies in shipping will continue to be a huge blessing, maybe as it gets easier and easier. Right now, that I think is one of our struggles is trying to ship in a timely manner and also a costly manner, because shipping's very pricey. One of the things that we have done where we've actually really been able to work on that is look into shipping air, and I'm talking like air cargo. And that has been, I wish more people would consider it, because it's been a really great addition for us. It lowers the cost about half of what UPS is. And along with that, we don't have to try to find dry ice. We can take it to the airport. For instance, in our case, we can go to DIA. I can book it on a flight that day. They have coolers there at the airport that it stays in until it's time to ship. And then the person just has to go to the airport and pick it up. And we've heard it's been a real breeze and a piece of cake the times that we've used it. And so for shipping like larger quantities, like quarters and up, it's been great. But shipping is definitely a challenge. But I think that's something that we've really worked on, is just making sure that we have set shipping days and try to follow and abide by those, so that people know we're not going to ship as soon as you put an order in, because it was kind of like we were chasing our tails there for a while as soon as when we were doing that previously. So I think that's something we'll continue to work on efficiency for.
Fallon, do you have any comments about efficiencies that needed or that can make things easier?
Yeah, I mean, really, I think understanding your market, right? Like I'm not going to comment on the beef shipping because we do so much of it in so many different areas, it gets kind of out of control, but like physical freight on cattle and yard location, also in regards to like where your plant is and where your consumer base is. When you talk about shipping cattle right now, whether it's just you hauling them with the price of diesel or getting the whole load out, not to mention having to store that product and then get it somewhere to then be hauled somewhere else. I think just considering utilizing your market base and really honing in on that so that you can make the most efficiency out of it, because the more time you spend moving stuff back and forth, obviously the more costly it's going to be.
There's another question here that I would like
Sure.
to answer. Okay.
Absolutely.
It's from Bree, and it says, curious if we have thoughts about selling direct to consumer in bulk versus individual cuts when selling to urban areas. I don't get very many questions about, do you sell steaks individually or roast, anything like that from urban areas. I usually get, what seems to happen most often is someone wants to know if we have a quarter available, and then they are going in with it, like with a family member. So like their parents and one of the kids, like in that family, like two families are going in on a quarter. I actually get more requests for individual steaks or roasts from people here in our rural community than I do like from the urban, like an urban area. The urban area kind of understands it's a bigger investment and they don't have a gigantic freezer, but they want that and they're willing to like spread it out with another family to make it happen. So there you go, Bree.
Thank you, Brandy. Question just popped up. What is the average of your animal's weight at slaughter time and your recommended feeding program? Fallon, do you want to start on that?
Sure, because I know that mine is going to be very different than everyone else's. We feed F1 Wagyu crosses, so that is full blood bulls on a predominantly Angus cow base. We are not technically, or I guess legally, like Jacqueline said, but we are no hormone, no implant, no growth promotants, none of that. So it's considered all natural. We also put our calves directly in the yard at weaning, so we don't background on grass or anything like that. And the ration that they're on is not as hot as commodity ration would be. Our cattle average 25 to 28 months of age, and our harvest weights are upwards of 1,600 pounds sometimes. So they're big. They're big cattle, they're heavy cattle. They dress really well, actually, and they're on feed for a long time. And that's honestly a very, very prominent breed characteristic of the Wagyu breed. They're later maturing, even with the cross. And our goal is the eating experience, which is what our consumers have, I guess, showed interest in of the product. So that's why we do that. I'm not saying it's maybe the most efficient, but we definitely keep it as efficient as possible. And that's why we collect the data we do, is to maximize that age and weight factor as much as we can.
Brandy, your comment on weight and time on feeding program?
Yeah, so I'm not a cattle nutritionist. My husband is a monogastric nutritionist, but we actually work with we have a cattle, ruminant nutritionist, that's the word I'm looking for.
There you go.
Who actually went to college with, and he helps us manage those rations and get them balanced the right way, because you can really, like, margins are tight and you can really have a lot in feed and then end up like not making any profit on your freezer beef, and then kind of what's the point. So we keep a really close eye on our feed inputs. We ideally we try to get like a 1,300 pound live animal that we send to the butcher. That's what we like. We don't always get them all the way to 1,300 pounds, but that's what we would like to. So if we have to send one at 12 or 1225, we will, because if that's what we have at our butcher appointment, that's when we've got to take them. But and when that happens, we let the buyer know, like, hey, this one is going at a little bit lighter weight, so your price is going to be lower, but your take-home product is also going to be a little bit lower too.
So you feed all the cattle there on your operation, on your ranch?
Yeah. So because we have them staggered and we don't ever, like we probably will do like 20 a year, 20-ish, but they're not already at the same time, right? So they get weaned and then they go to grass, because we fall calves, so we wean in the spring, like March, April, and then they go to grass. But like right now, I have some in our lot pens here at our house that are getting fed out. So we always have some in process. So I don't have like 20 head on feed right here at the time, but we do it ourselves because we only have 20. So yeah, they are here on our property, maybe not in my backyard, but like are on the land that we lease or own through the whole process.
Now, do you have your own grinding operation there, where you grind your own rations there, or do you buy your ration somewhere?
Oh, we buy. So we have a feed mill in the town that we get our ration from when we do feed. So depending on like the price of feed and different ingredients and what season it is, we change what we feed. So like in the fall, our feeder beef and the cow calf herd and the developing bulls they have silage is a key component of their corn silage is a key component of our ration. But like right now, it's not a lot, but like the ration is composed of cracked corn or crimp corn, soybean meal, and then depending on the pricing between corn and DDGs, we'll go with dried distillers grains instead of corn. So it really just depends on the different pricing, what level of protein we're trying to get worked in. Are they close to being done, finished? Are they just starting on this concentrate diet? So it kind of varies, but we don't do any ingredient grinding or prepping or anything here. We actually don't even really grow crops. The only crops that we grow are 12 acres of corn that goes directly to silage. So we don't grow any of our own feed.
Great. And another question was how do you grow or price your beef on the hoof or on the rail? I think Jacqueline mentioned earlier you sell it, quarters, halves, maybe a whole product, or a steak at a time even. But so how do you price those? I mean, what's your operation doing in that regard?
Well, and I'll kind of go into that, but talk a little bit about our feeding method. So what we do is I'll background here at the ranch. I'll wean usually coming off of in about October, and then I'll run on pasture till January, and then background here until May. A lot of times I'll send cattle back to the ranch. So I'm not going into a finishing yard until they're reaching about that 800 to 1,000 pound level. I do use a finishing yard. I actually use a bison yard. We're about their only beef customer in the bison yard, but they do an amazing job of finishing cattle out for us. And we've got a wonderful relationship to the point, like if I need to go sort cattle off, I go do it. If we need to load trucks, I do it. If I market to the big four, I do it, and so it's really great that they allow me to have those freedoms that a lot of feedlots wouldn't have. And at the same time, we can work on a strategy. So if I say, let's just unload them into the pen, they go, we're great with that. The owners of it, we were laughing because he mentioned last year, he's like, I fed hundreds of cattle here, and I don't think I've ever ran a one of yours through the chute. And so, I mean, that's the kind of relationship that I want to have with the finishing yard. My goal weight is 1550. And the reason being is because I price everything on a pound basis. So when I'm selling a half, I'm including around, it's about 250 pounds of processed beef. And so if I've got an animal that's a little light, I will make that difference up with either more of that animal or a different animal. And so that's one of the things I think sometimes it becomes really confusing to producers when you're trying to explain yield grades and hanging weights and take home product and stuff. And so one of the things I would have loved to do is actually price everything by a per package basis. I'm able to do that on a couple cuts, like our New Yorks, our ribeyes, and our fillets, but otherwise I'm having to price them on a pound basis just because I don't have that consistency yet in processing. And that's something I think that I can definitely work with our processor, but it's a struggle for sure, is to get that uniformity and consistency in processing, because I think that's a huge piece of the picture that we miss. We do a heck of a job to raise that animal and get it to harvest, but then all it takes is somebody putting a label on or missing a vac pack seal, and it runs with all the hard work we did. And so, yeah, I think there's definitely better ways to do it, but when we were trying to figure out pricing, we wanted to do it in a way that we wouldn't kind of have to continue to explain it to consumers, what they were getting compared to what they thought they might have been getting.
And we price on we price per pound hanging weight, and what we do is too complicated, and I'm trying to figure out how to not do it that way anymore, to be completely honest. So we price on hanging weight, and then so our shoppers pay us for the beef, and then when they pick it up, they pay the processor. And in your mind, that seems like really clean. Oh, 1-2 payments done. But when you're explaining to someone, you have to explain, okay, you're paying us this amount of money per pound of hanging weight for the animal. And then, oh, by the way, when you go pick it up, then you need to write a check to them. And it seems really simple to us, but every time I have to explain it, I'm like, man, this is not the way we need to do this. So we are really close to probably either transitioning to charging it on the hoof per pound, or us just absorbing the cost of the processing and rolling it into one so that they just pay us. Like, they're still going to pay for the processing, but we're just going to pay for the processing and then roll it into the check that they have to pay us, so that they only write one thing. It's easier for them to understand. So again, it's all with this trial and error. It's been a steep learning curve. It's why I don't want to do 60 head a year, because it'd be a lot of explanation. But we have, I do most of the marketing of our freezer beef, and I have just, through all the conversations and such, and I love talking to people about where the beef comes from and engaging, and that really lights my fire, a good fire, in terms of helping people understand more about where their food comes from. But just, it takes so much time. So I'm really close to transitioning to like one price of the beef, just to save me some time.
Mm-hmm. We had another question here, Fallon. I think you answered it, though. The question was, how long do you feed your Wagyu cattle prior to shipment? I think you said 25 to 28 months of age at harvest, those cattle are. Any further comments on that?
Yeah, I also should clarify that, like, while we have 1,600 pounders, our heifers, because we harvest about 300 a week. So our heifers are going to average like 1450 or 1350, on our steers are going to average about 1450. As far as days on feed, it's going to be quite a bit longer, because, like, unlike Jacqueline, we don't background them. So they're going in as 4 or 5 weights, and then that puts them on feed to get to the age I described at like 400, 450 days.
Okay, great. Well, we got maybe time for another question or two if someone wants to type one into the chat room for us there. But we've covered a lot of ground here, and it's been, I think, a great conversation, and one I think that'll lead possibly to further questions. So if anybody is attending, if you have a question, you can forward those into the AgriWebb here, and I think then they'll get them to Jacqueline, Fallon, and Brandy, if you want to, if you have a specific question for one of them, or just something in general as well. But I think, branded programs or programs like this are here to stay, these farm to market programs. They're certainly going to evolve over time, I think, as we learn more and we new challenges and opportunities come our way. But so do you are all of you kind of committed? Is your passion, as you've got into this and you've worked and you've realized, well, maybe this is more than I thought about it and more work than I thought. Are you committed? I mean, how do you see yourself moving forward, all three of you? One of you go first, Brandy.
We're going to keep doing it because it is, like, it's a more profitable marketing channel for those bulls that aren't seed stock worthy, I guess, than just taking them to the auction barn. So I guess if some year I get all the bulls are just like knockouts, then I guess I won't have any beef to sell, and that won't make me sad. But the chances of that are slim. So it's always going to be an avenue for us. It's not something that we're looking to try to grow to 30 or 40 or 50 head. It's just, it is what it is right now, but it's become a good venture for us. It's mostly reliable. We have a good list of repeat customers. I'm always having new people come to us. So it's going to be a part of our business for many years to come. I don't see it growing out of, if it grows, it'll grow out of necessity, not out of, because as our operation expands and we have more cows, we'll have probably, theoretically we should have a few more bulls that don't pan out. So I see it growing out of that, not growing out of, I want to become a direct to beef mogul. Yeah. Like that's not the goal.
So really it enhances your current program and production system, really. Yeah. So Jacqueline, how about you? You committed?
Yes, and it just depends on the day. Sometimes and I think that's one of the things, though. It's been so rewarding to actually, I tag weigh band all of our calves at birth, and I'm also the one that delivers the product to consumers, and to be able to to share that with them, that I always say, our animals have a purpose, and that purpose is to feed everyone. And so being able to help those animals fulfill that purpose is probably one of the greatest accomplishments I have. And to be able to do it in a way, I see a question on sustainability. Yes, to be able to do it in a way that I feel is definitely improving our environment and our generations of years upon years that we have in the ranching industry, and being able to grow and continue to educate myself. And I think that's the biggest thing for me, whether it is to be looking at tenderness on neogens. And yes, some of that data is lining up with almost just completely with what we're seeing on paper. And so being able to improve and continue to grow and make myself better, and hopefully make other producers better that, ask about what our direct to consumer program's doing. And I'll tell this story real quick, and I'll make it Cliff Notes version. So I was selling some cattle last year to the Big Four, and I had an order buyer come in, and he went out and looked at the cattle, and then he called me and he's like, they're another month out at least. And I said, I think they're ready now. And he goes, no, they need at least another month. So I called Tyson the next day, and Tyson had him processed within a week. And so that order buyer, he calls me back, and I'm not going to say which Big Four he was with. He called me back about 45 days later, and he's like, do you still have those cattle? And I said, no, they were harvested a week after you came out. And he just went dead silent on the phone. And I think that's something, especially if I'm selling on grid to the Big Four, it's really improved my knowledge of what I'm marketing. And so if some order buyer tells me that they're not ready and I'm telling him there is, I like to think I'm starting to get to know my cattle, hopefully better than he is.
Mm-hmm. Sure. Well, Fallon, I mean, I know that Mishima Reserve, as you mentioned earlier, you can't fill the demand. And so the future, I think, really looks pretty bright. Do you see that continuing on, or do you see some changes coming?
Yeah. I mean, really, for us, it's trying to even out our supply chain. A lot of people calve in the spring, so we need some fall producers. But really, it's all positive. And Brandy raises her hand. Hey, Kansas, let's go. But it's great, right? And like for producers that maybe jump in and have a DTC and it becomes too much work, whatever the case may be, still having an outlet for something and a brand that you trust, I think, is the value of our business. It's not just to the Big Four. You don't know where it's going or who it's getting it. Like I said, we don't know necessarily what calf ends up in what retail chain or whatever the case may be, but you can always see them, and we're going to give you a lot of insight. And that's the whole transparency value there, not only for the consumer, but for the producer. And it will continue to grow, I think. I think all the other brands are seeing that as well, whether that be an NHTC, Angus deal, or whatever the case may be. So excited to see what happens, the new things that come, and hopefully we'll be able to tackle them. Well,
great. This has been really good and enjoyable. And like I say, I know Jacqueline probably the longest, and and Fallon and Brandy, but it's really been fun for me to have this hour to spend with you, and for you three to share your knowledge and your experiences, and all of you are certainly, Brandy, you're all our experts and what you do. And I know the consumers appreciate it, and the industry appreciates your efforts and moving forward. And I just want to say I appreciate you allowing me to spend this hour with the three of you and learn from you. So again, if anybody has any questions, would certainly reach out and ask them. I think they'd be very open to answering your questions if anybody has questions, tomorrow or the next day for this incredible group of young ladies here.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you for being here. Maybe we'll do this again tomorrow.